Hello, everyone. So many of you have been doing the mental health books with me. So now we're starting our fourth mental health book. So we're going to begin with Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Now, this is a book that helps you communicate in difficult situations with difficult people without using gimmicks or hacks or certain words or this phrase or that phrase. So this is the book that you can use for communication, especially if you are somebody who has a difficult time communicating with narcissistic people, toxic people, manipulative people, gaslighters. So this book gives us the foundation of communication. It teaches us how to communicate with all kinds of people. So today we're beginning the non-violent communication book, and I will, just like all my previous discussion and book clubs discussions that we've done, I will read and discuss the book. And please leave your comments and questions in the comment section of or email me at holisticdolly@gmail.com. So let's get into it. When you open this book, there's a lot of testimonials and how the book has helped people. So please go through and read that. And especially the foreword that's given by Deepak Chopra is really helpful for you to understand Ahinsa. Ahinsa is the center, which is peaceful communication, is the center of this book. So let's get into it. The book has, I think, about 14 chapters, and we're going to do each live is going to be one chapter, and you will be able to ask me questions or leave discussion comments. And yeah, so the chapters are one we're going to do today, which is giving from the heart. Then in that, the author talks about non NVC process, which is non-violent communication process and the steps. So we're going to go through that process today, how to communicate in a non-violent manner. Then the next chapter is communication that blocks compassion. So we're going to learn what to avoid when communicating. Then we're going to learn how to observe without evaluating. That's the third chapter. Then the fourth is identify and express your feelings. Fifth chapter is all about taking responsibility for your feelings. And then sixth is requesting that which would enrich life, which is how to request honesty, how to approach to elicit, to get honesty and acceptance from people. Then learning, seventh chapter is how to learn to receive empathically. So, and each of these chapters have exercises that we will do together as well. Then power of empathy. Then we're going to learn how to connect compassionately with ourselves before we connect with others. Then we're going to learn self forgiveness in that. Then it comes down to expressing your anger fully in a positive, healthy manner. And then we do conflict resolution and mediation and learn how to use the forces to communicate effectively and not get caught up in the triggers and not get caught up in the tactics and the gaslighting and the manipulation, right? So we want to have clear, authentic communication which comes from our heart and is not gimmicky. There's no hacks to it, but it does help you establish a really open-hearted communication foundation. So let us begin. Chapter 1. So I'm beginning the book with the first chapter, page 1, giving from the heart. I really want you to read Deepak Chopra's foreword for the book. I'd like you to read how the book has helped so many people, and all of that is in the pages before chapter 1. So giving from the heart is the first chapter that we will cover in this live today. As usual, I will read this and I will discuss it and offer my thoughts and experience, strength and hope. And I hope you will do the same in the comments section or my email, or right. So let us begin. Giving from the heart of non-violent communication. I love this quote. What I want in my life is compassion, a flow between myself and others based on a mutual giving from the heart, right? So we want that openness in our relationships, we want that flow in our relationships. Introduction. Believing that it is our nature to enjoy giving and receiving in a compassionate manner, I have been preoccupied most of my life with two questions. What happens to disconnect us from our compassionate nature, leading us to behave violently and exploitatively? And conversely, what allows some people to stay connected to their compassionate nature even under the most trying circumstances, right? Some people, when rubber meets the road, comes there all the negative traits, right? Self hatred, hatred for others, inability to communicate without anger or blame. But some people are able to retain their compassionate nature even during the most difficult circumstances. And why and how does that happen? So, we want to develop a style of communication that is compassionate in nature but also helps us communicate and get what we need and want for the highest good of everyone involved, right? So, second paragraph. My preoccupation with these questions began in childhood, around the summer of 1943, when our family moved to Detroit. The second week we arrived, a race war erupted. So, this is 1943, and a race war erupted over an incident at a public park. More than 40 people were killed over the next few days. Our neighborhood was locked down. When the race riot ended and school began, I discovered that a name could be as dangerous as any skin color. When the teacher called my name during attendance, two boys glared at me and hissed. So the author experienced so much hate because of who they are and what they look like and their name. And since that summer, I have been examining the two questions I mentioned. What empowers us, for example, to stay connected to our compassionate nature even under the worst circumstances? I'm thinking of people like Eddie, who remained compassionate even while subjected to grotesque conditions of a German concentration camp, right? So, that's the quest. Why and how are some people able to stay connected to their compassion while experiencing humanity of from the other person, right? So while studying the factors that affect our ability to stay compassionate, I was struck by the crucial role of language and use of words. I have since identified a specific approach to communicating, both speaking and listening, right? So communication is not just speaking, but it's also listening. It's your energetic presence, it's your body language, it's how open you feel as you are present to the other person, right? So the author wants to find out, the author is communicating to us that they have an approach that leads us to give from the heart. It helps us connect with ourselves and each other in a way that allows our natural compassion to flourish. I call this approach non-violent communication, using the term non-violence as Gandhi used to refer to it as our natural state of compassion when violence has subsided from the heart. While we may not consider the way we talk to be violent, words often lead to pain and hurt, right? We all know that when we're angry and we say certain things that we don't mean, they come across as violent because they hurt the other person. And while we may not consider the way we talk to be violent, words often lead to hurt and pain, whether for others or ourselves. In some communities, the process I'm describing is known as compassionate communication. And that is the answer to healing. Compassion is the answer to recovery from trauma. Compassion communication repairs relationships. So, and we see nonviolent communication is a way of communicating that leads us to give from the heart. So, a way to focus attention. Nonviolence communication is founded on language and communication skills that strengthen our ability to remain human even under difficult situations. It contains nothing new. All that has been integrated into nonviolence communication has been known for centuries, and history is proof that nonviolence communication has been used on a global level as well. So it is used to create change, to initiate activism, to reach out to other people to understand. And the example at the end of this chapter is just so good. So we're going to get to that. Nonviolence communication, which is NVC, guides us in reframing how we express ourselves and hear others. Instead of habitual automatic reactions, our words become conscious responses based firmly on awareness of what we are perceiving, feeling, and wanting. We are led to express ourselves with honesty and clarity while simultaneously paying others a respectful, empathetic attention. So, even if you don't agree with the other person, you can still express yourself honestly and you can empathetically be present for them as they express themselves. So, this is the process we're going to learn on how to become that person who has the presence that can hold space for different point of views and comes out with an outcome which is acceptable to all parties. Conflict resolution is the ultimate gift of empathetic listening, of non-violent communication. So let me take a pause for a second and see if there's any questions. How are we doing? How's the chat doing? All right, looks like everyone is doing good. So we'll keep going. So, nonviolent communication guides us in reframing how we express ourselves and how we hear others. Instead of habitual automatic reactions, our words become conscious responses based firmly on awareness of what we are perceiving, feeling, and wanting. So, this is not faking it, this is not a gimmick or a hack. You express what you mean and what you feel, but you express it in a way that it's received by the other person. We are led to express ourselves with honesty and clarity, with simultaneously paying others respectful, empathetic attention. In exchange, we come to hear our own deeper needs and those of others. Nonviolent communication trains us to observe carefully, to be able to specify behaviors and conditions that are affecting us. We learn to identify and clearly articulate what we are concretely wanting in any given situation. The form is simple, powerful, and transformative. So that's the promise of this type of communication style, that it's simple, but it's powerful and it's transformative. So not only are we going to learn how to talk to ourselves in a non harming, safe, encouraging manner, but we're also going to learn how to talk to other people similarly. Our as non-violent communication replaces our old patterns of defending, withdrawing, or attacking in the face of judgment and criticism. We come to perceive ourselves and others, as well as our intentions and relationships, in a new light. Resistance, defensiveness, and violent reactions are minimized. So, this is the gift of nonviolent communication, that resistance, defensiveness, and violent reactions are minimized. So, the energy that we bring to the conversations and relationships is changed. When we focus on clarifying what is being observed, felt, needed, rather than diagnosing and judging, we discover the depth of our own compassion. Through its emphasis on deep listening to ourselves and others, NVC fosters respect, attentiveness, empathy, and engenders a mutual desire to give from the heart, right? So it opens up your heart and it brings you to present moment, and there's awareness, right? And there's acceptance. So energetically, when you're seated and foundationally grounded in nonviolence communication, you foster respect and attentiveness. We perceive relationships in a new light when we use NVC to hear our own deeper needs and those of others. Although I refer to this process as the process of communication or a language of compassion, NVC is more than that. On a deeper level, it's an ongoing reminder to keep our attention focused on a place where we are more likely to get what we are seeking. So many times our communication actually gets us in trouble, right? And with this method, we get what we are seeking. So we shine light of consciousness on places where we can hope to find what we are seeking. And that's what this communication style is going to teach us. When we give from the heart, we do so out of the joy that springs forth whenever we willingly enrich another person's life. This kind of giving benefits both the giver and the receiver. And the giver, you could be giving niceness, you could be giving energetically, just your presence, just your attention, just your uh, awareness. Those are big gifts that are not given in communication these days. People are not aware or present, or empathy is not there, compassion is not there, right? People just throw carelessly throwing words at each other is not communication, and it's definitely not nonviolent communication, right? In nonviolent communication, the receiver enjoys the gift without worrying about the consequences that accompany gifts given out of fear, shame, guilt, desire to gain, right? So we're not giving out of shame. We're giving because it feels good to give to the other person. The giver benefits from the enhanced self esteem that results when we see our efforts contributing to someone's well being, right? So if someone is doing good and our relationship is improving, then why wouldn't we give those words of affirmation? The use of non NVC does not require that the persons with whom we are communicating be literate in NVC or even motivated to relate to us compassionately. So you can be present with this skill set of NVC or be present compassionately. It doesn't require anything of the other person to get the results that we want. And we're going to see this in the example which is coming up. And I'm so excited to share read this example to you and discuss it with you. The use of NVC, if we stay with the principles of NVC, stay motivated solely to give and receive compassionately, and do everything we can to let others know that this is our only motive, they will join us in the process and eventually be able to respond compassionately to one another, right? So when we show up compassionately, vulnerably, with radical acceptance, radical honesty, we're going to learn all that, right? When we show up as a human, we invite parts of other person to be present empathetically, and they start mirroring us as well, right? So when we get the results, when it feels good, everybody starts bringing forth that energy of compassion. And I'm not saying that this will always happen quickly. I do maintain, however, that compassion inevitably blossoms when we stay true to the principles and process of the nonviolent communication. So, if we stay true to this process, we're going to get the results of harmony, peace in relationships, growth in relationships, deepening of intimacy in relationships, right? So let us understand what this process is. Let's get into it. So, for those of you reading from the book with me, I am on page 7. Four components of NVC are observations, feelings, needs, and requests. So let us understand how that works. First, we observe what is actually happening in this situation. What are we observing others are saying or doing that is either enriching or depleting our life, right? So we're just a neutral, non-biased observer of what is happening and how their action or their words are affecting us and the situation. Now the trick is to be able to articulate this observation without introducing any judgment or evaluation, to simply say what people are doing, whether we like it or not. Next, we state how we feel when we observe this action. So first, you just non-judgmentally neutral observer of this is what's going on. This person's doing this or they're saying this. And then the second step is it's making me feel. We state how we feel when we observe this action. Are we hurt, scared, joyful, amused, irritated, frustrated, right? So we observe, we watch, then we state our feelings. And then thirdly, we say what need of ours are connected to the feelings we have identified. So an awareness of these three components is present when we use nonviolent communication to clearly and honestly express how we are. Now, when you observe somebody being rude, for example, or having a harsh choice of words, and then they're really angry, you're feeling scared, right? You observe they're angry, they're using harsh words, loud, they may be yelling. Then you're feeling scared, you're feeling abandoned, you're feeling shocked. And then what is the need that is not being fulfilled? Need of safety, need of being heard or being talked to as a human being, need of respect, right? And then based on what needs are not being met, you will make your requests. So you're not going to say that, oh, you are a bad person because you yell and you are this and I talk. You're going to say, hey, you're yelling. I'm feeling scared and I want to feel safe. I request you, the fourth step is I request you to tone down your style, or your words, soften your words, or can we talk about this later? So make your request, which is basically your boundary, right? That's what we call boundary. So this is the most effective way of communicating when you are when you're stuck and don't know how to approach somebody. The most clear way, the most articulate way that you can put forth what's going on, how it's making you feel, what needs is it not fulfilling, and then what is your boundary, what is your request. So these are the four components of non-violent communication. So let's get into an example. A mother might express these three pieces to her teenage son by saying, Felix, when I see soiled socks under the coffee table and next to the TV, I feel irritated because I am needing. So, observation is there's soiled socks everywhere. The mother is feeling irritated because what is she needing? Because I'm needing more order in the house or in the common area to feel grounded, to go right. So and then immediately, what is the fourth component? A request. Would you be willing to put your socks in your room or in the washing machine, right? So that's your boundary, that's your request, right? So clearly communicate without all the extra emotion, and to directly reach somebody, the four components that you're going to use to communicate are: you observe what's going on, you observe internally what are you feeling, then you learn what needs are not being fulfilled, and then what requests do I have, right? So part of nonviolent communication is to express these four pieces of information very clearly, whether verbally or by any other means. The other part of this communication consists of receiving the same four pieces of information from others. So no matter what they're saying, you have to connect with them by first sensing what they are observing. So what are they observing, what are they feeling, what are they needing, and then discover what is the request, what is their request, what would enrich their lives, or your relationship, what is the ultimate request, what are they needing, right? You have to really cut to the chase. But this is the way to understand when there's a whole bunch of words coming at you and you're trying to understand what is really going on. You want to observe the other person and see what are they observing, what is their POV, what is their point of view, and then what are they feeling, what are they saying they're feeling, what are they needing. So, for example, if somebody says, hey, you don't spend enough time with me, and they're just going off on you, then you see that, oh, they're really upset, is the observation. But they're feeling like they're lonely, maybe. They're feeling that they're not seen or heard. What is their need? Their need is to be heard, to be seen in the relationship, their need, right? So, and then you discover, how can I? You can ask for, how can I help you improve this situation or ease your pain, right? So that's what we're going to learn more and more of in this book. And the book really goes through different scenarios and different situations in which you can use these principles. And this is just a simplistic process that we went through, but we can use more detail as we learn more. We're going to use more detailed things to really conflict resolution, basically. So, what is the NVC process? The concrete actions are: we observe what's happening, how it affects our well being. We feel in relation to what we observe. If this is happening, this is what I'm feeling. My needs, values, and desires. What needs, values, and desires are not being met that create this feeling of maybe resentment or anger or sadness, whatever I'm feeling? And then what concrete actions do I need to take in order to enrich my life? Right. So when we use this process, we may either begin by expressing ourselves or empathically receiving these four pieces of information from other people. Right. So it is important to keep in mind that non-violent communication is not it's not a set formula, but it's something that can adapt to various situations, various cultural styles, various personal styles. So even though it's a process and there's steps, you have to adapt it to your style. And you can also go through and experience all these four pieces of information without uttering a single word. You can observe what's happening, you can understand your feelings, then you can understand what needs are not being met, and then you can have a request of, this is what needs to happen for me to get my needs met, for me to understand, right? So, what are the two parts of non-violent communication? One is to express honestly, right? And to receive empathically. So these are the two main pillars, if you will, of nonviolent communication. One is to express yourself honestly, authentically, and systematically with the four components. And then you receive and you listen with empathy. And we will learn all this as we go through. as we go through the process. Now, applying, so now I'm at applying NVC in our lives and the world. All right. So applying nonviolent communication in our lives and the world. When we use nonviolent communication in our interactions with ourselves, with other people, or in a group, we become grounded in our natural state of compassion. And that's the big thing that we're going to learn as we do this work, how to tap into that natural state of compassion so the other person is not your enemy anymore. So both of you trying to communicate are on the same side. So that's what we're going to learn, how to become grounded in our natural state of compassion. It is therefore an approach that this approach that can be applied to all levels of communication and in diverse situations, such as you can apply nonviolent communication to intimate relationships, to families, to in schools, at work, in therapy with my clients, right? I use this type of communication to help them understand that I'm on your side. I understand what's going on, right? So any kind of disputes or conflicts of any nature, you can apply this. Any difficult relationship that you have, you can apply this to that in order to get the right outcome, right? So let's look at, so then the author talks about all these different people who have used nonviolent communication to create greater depth and caring in their intimate relationships. So this person says, when I learned how I can receive, which is here, as well as give, which is express, through nonviolent communication, I went beyond feeling attacked or doormatish to really listening to the words and extracting their underlying feelings. I discovered a very hurting man to whom I was married for 28 years. He had asked me for a divorce the weekend before the nonviolent communication workshop. To make a long story short, we are here today together and appreciate the contribution this style of communication has contributed to our marriage and relationship, and basically it helped them improve their marriage and work relationship. So these are all testimonials towards the end of the chapter that you can read to understand how this style of communication has helped so many people. So I'm really interested in getting into the towards the end. Right after the testimonials, there is a summary on page, and then the example, which is so amazing, on page, so now we're on page 12, nonviolent communication in action. Interspersed throughout the book are dialogues entitled NVC in Action. These dialogues intend to impart the flavor of an actual exchange in which a speaker is applying these principles. Nonviolent communication is not simply a language or a set of techniques. It is the consciousness and the intent that it embraces, may be expressed through silence or through quality presence, as well as through facial expressions, body language. So nonviolent communication in action dialogues you are the dialogues that you will be reading. So let me read this example to you. My dog's looking for me. So this is a really great example of how the author diffused a really difficult situation and how you can too. This style of communication you can use in talking to yourself, in talking to difficult people, or in difficult relationships, or just generally day to day, right? So I was presenting, so the author was presenting nonviolent communication to about 170 Palestinian Muslim men in a mosque. Attitude towards Americans at that time were not favorable. Well, this is As I was speaking, I suddenly noticed a wave of muffled commotion fluttering through the audience. They whispered. They're whispering that you're American. My translator alerted me. Just as a gentleman in the audience leapt to his feet and hollered at the top of his lungs, "Murderer!" Immediately, a dozen of other voices joined him in chorus: "Assassin! Child killer! Murderer!" Fortunately, I was able to focus my attention on what the man was feeling and needing. Right? So the words I hear, but what are you feeling and what are you needing is what I need to get to your heart, right? So I can really talk to you. In this case, I had some cues. On the way into the camp, I had seen several empty tear gas canisters that had been shot into the camp the night before. Clearly marked on each canister were the words "Made in USA." I knew that the refugees harbored a lot of anger towards the United States for supplying tear gas and other weapons. I addressed the man who called me a murderer. So, check this out. So, I use this type of communication at the hospital when I talk to distressed patients or family members that are so angry, right? And all right, so let's see. So, MBR, this is the author. Author says, "Are you angry because you would like my government to use its resources differently?" The man says, "Damn right, I'm angry. You think we need tear gas? We need sewers. We need housing. We have our country." So the author says, "You're furious and would appreciate some support in improving your living conditions." The man says, "Yes. Do you know what it's like to live here for so many years? And have you gotten how hard it is for us?" So basically, mirroring validation and acceptance, right? Sounds like the author says, Marshall Rosenberg, right? Marshall Rosenberg says, "Sounds like you're feeling very desperate and you're wondering whether I or anybody else can really understand what it's like to be living in these conditions. Am I hearing you right?" So you don't want to say it in a condescending manner or a "I'm too smart for you" manner. You're just really empathetically, you're present. You're saying, "Hey, I see you. I understand what you're saying. Am I hearing you right?" So the man says, "You want to understand? Tell me, do you have children? Do they go to school?" So he goes on and on. And then the author says, "I hear how painful it is for you to raise your children here. You want me to know what it's like for all the parents." The man says, "Yeah, basic rights, human rights." So then the author says, "You want me to be more aware of the enormity of the suffering here, to look more deeply at the consequences of our political actions," right? So just understand. So he really accepted, the author accepted his pain, validated his pain. Like, "I see you are suffering. I understand. I see you're suffering," right? What is compassion? I'm present here. I see you are suffering, and I understand I'm here to understand your suffering as best as I can. Right? That's what the author is saying. Our dialogue continued with him expressing his pain for nearly 20 more minutes, and me listening for the feelings and need behind each statement. I didn't agree or disagree. I received his words not as attacks, but gifts from a fellow human being to share his soul and his deep vulnerabilities with me. Once the gentleman felt understood, he was able to hear me explain my purpose for being at camp. An hour later, the same man who called me a murderer was inviting me to his home for Ramadan dinner. Wow. So that's the power of non-violent communication, understanding that the other person just needs compassionate listening, understanding of their pain, validation of their pain, and true presence. Not Do not hurry them up, do not minimize their pain, let them talk, let them express. And So that's the process we're going to learn. So this is the end of chapter 1. This is the process we're going to learn as we continue through the chapters. So in the next live, I will talk to you about chapter 2, communication that blocks compassion. I hope this is helpful to you. I hope you will do the work alongside me in order to really grasp what it means to be a non-violent communicator, how to apply this to your life every single day in order to get the results that you want, the outcome that you desire. All right, I hope to see you guys to study chapter number 2.